Think about this. In 2024, the German economy shrank for the second time, back to back. Protests in the streets of France never stopped. Governments collapsed. Millions of people left Eastern Europe, not moving west, moving out entirely. And you still think Europe is a safe, strong, stable continent? Because what I'm about to tell you today is something almost never discussed in mainstream media: how Europe is quietly unraveling from the inside. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is not the prediction of a doomsday prophet. This is a picture assembled from hard data, demographics, geopolitics, and an energy crisis that all lock together at once. And the end of this picture does not look bright. Watch until the end, because what I'll say in the final 5 minutes of this video will be the strangest and most honest thing you've ever heard about Europe. But first, you might be thinking, Europe has been struggling for years. What makes this time different? And that question is exactly the wrong question, because this time, it's different. In the past, Europe faced crises and survived. The 2008 financial crash, Greece on the brink of default. It even held together through the chaos of Brexit. But what's happening right now is not the same, because this time the crises aren't arriving one after another. This time, they're all arriving at once. Energy crisis, population crisis, loss of competitiveness, political fragmentation, geopolitical isolation, and underneath all of them, there is one single truth. The European model was never designed for the 21st century. Let's go back to the very beginning of the story. After World War II, Europe was rubble. But from that rubble was born the most fascinating political experiment in human history, uniting nations that had been killing each other under one roof. And it worked. Through the golden decades, stretching from the 1950s to the 1990s, Europe grew, got richer, democratized. What we call the welfare state was built: free healthcare, strong education, reliable pensions. Europe became a model the entire world envied. But that model came with a price. And that price is now due. Welfare states are expensive. To remain sustainable, they need two things. First, a growing population, more workers, more taxpayers. Second, a growing economy, constant production, exports, competitive strength. So where does Europe stand on both of those right now? This is where things start to get complicated. And this is where the real problem begins. Europe is dying. That's not a metaphor. That's a demographic fact. Europe's fertility rate is 1.5. For a population to replace itself, that number needs to be at least 2.1, which means every new generation is smaller than the one before it. Let me make that concrete. By 2050, approximately 35% of Germany's population will be over the age of 60. In Italy, that figure will approach 40%. Now think about this. Who is going to pay those people's pensions? Who is going to treat them in hospitals? Who is going to work in the factories, the schools, the construction sites? The answer: no one. Not enough people, because the younger generation has shrunk and keeps shrinking. Europe's answer was immigration. Hundreds of thousands, then millions of people arrived from the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. But that solution created new problems: an integration crisis, cultural tension, political polarization, and the far right rose to power at exactly this moment. Marine Le Pen in France, Meloni in Italy, Orban in Hungary, Wilders in the Netherlands. These are no longer fringe figures. These are names that win elections and form governments. And that is deepening the fractures running through Europe even further. But here's where Europe's real dilemma comes into sharp focus. Let's talk about Germany. Germany isn't just a country. Germany is Europe's engine, the continent's largest economy, its biggest exporter, the heart inside the heart of the European Union. In 2024, the German economy shrank by 0.2%. That was the second consecutive year of contraction, following the same in 2023. Volkswagen put factory closures on the table for the first time in its history in Germany. BASF started pulling investments out of Europe and redirecting them to the United States. ThyssenKrupp began scaling back its steel operations. Why? Because energy in Europe is expensive, enormously expensive. Before Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Germany was sourcing 55% of its energy from Russia. Cheap, reliable natural gas. That gas was cut off, and Germany couldn't find an alternative. Not at the same price. Now, Germany is buying liquefied natural gas from the United States and Qatar at 3 to 4 times the cost. That price gap has devastated the competitive foundation of German industry. But energy isn't the only problem. China is coming, not just with cheap goods anymore, with high technology in electric vehicles. BYD has overtaken Volkswagen in solar panels. China already wiped Europe off the map in semiconductors, artificial intelligence, green technology. Europe is falling behind both China and the United States across the board. And what is Europe's response to this competition? Regulation, rules, bureaucratic process. The EU's AI Act was the world's first. Yes, it's pioneering, but it's also the most restrictive. Starting a business in Europe is far harder than doing the same in America or Asia. And what are Europe's best entrepreneurs doing? They're leaving Europe. But now I need to ask the most important question of all. Who exactly is protecting Europe from the outside world? For 80 years, the answer was the same: the United States of America. Under the NATO umbrella, Europe didn't need to arm itself. It kept defense spending low. It invested that money into the welfare state instead. But that model is now shaking. During Trump's second term, NATO was openly challenged. The US began questioning the level of its support for Ukraine, and Europe suddenly found itself asking, can it defend itself? The answer, no, not right now. Germany's military, the Bundeswehr, was neglected for decades. Ammunition stocks are at dangerously low levels. France has nuclear capability, but that capability was never designed to protect the entire continent. And this is exactly where Russia's strategic gamble comes into play. The war in Ukraine is not just a territorial conflict. This war is shaking the entire security architecture of Europe. Finland and Sweden joined NATO. That was a historic step, but the war continues, and Europe is beginning to show signs of fatigue. Fatigue is dangerous because fatigue opens the door to compromise, and compromise is precisely what Russia wants. Meanwhile, China is expanding its influence across Africa and the Middle East. The territories that were once Europe's colonial sphere are becoming the playing field of entirely different powers. And what is Europe doing about it? Holding summits, issuing declarations, preparing sanction packages. But actual hard power projection? Nowhere to be found. And this is where the story gets truly complicated. Quick pause right here. If you want to keep following content like this, hit subscribe, because these topics are never told this way in mainstream media. The European Union does not speak with one voice. It never fully did, but right now, that reality is more visible than ever before. Hungary has blocked EU sanctions on Russia multiple times. Poland continues to wrestle with both the EU and its own history. Italy is openly defying the bloc on immigration policy. France and Germany spent months at odds over the Ukraine response. 27 countries, 27 different sets of interests, 27 different electorates. Most EU decisions require unanimity among 27 countries. Do you understand what that means? It means the system is slow by design, and in an era that demands speed, slowness is a death sentence. Technology moves fast, wars move fast, crises move fast, but the EU negotiates, builds consensus, follows process. Meanwhile, the world is moving in a different direction entirely. And now I'm going to tell you something that sounds almost impossible. Despite everything I've just told you, Europe is still home to some of the highest quality of life anywhere on Earth. Life expectancy is high, crime rates are low, education is strong. Paris is still one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Copenhagen still tops happiness rankings. Vienna still ranks first for livability. So how can it be both this troubled and still this good? This is Europe's greatest paradox. Europe is collapsing, but it's collapsing very slowly. And that very slowness is actually the most dangerous thing of all. Because if a crisis hits fast, everyone wakes up. Emergency measures get taken, reforms happen. But a slow collapse, it moves forward without being noticed. Is each generation a little worse off than the last? A little poorer? A little more desperate? Maybe, but it's hard to see from inside it. And that is precisely Europe's great strategic blindness. The problems are visible, but the urgency isn't felt. Mario Draghi, former Italian Prime Minister, former head of the European Central Bank, wrote a report for the EU in 2024, and in it, he said, Europe will either undergo a major transformation or it will permanently lose its competitive edge. The report was 400 pages. It was devastating. It was widely discussed. And then it was buried in silence. But here's the thing. The real question isn't whether Europe is collapsing. The real question is, can Europe change? History tells us something interesting. Europe has undergone its deepest transformations in the middle of its greatest crises. The EU was born from the ruins of World War II. Democracies were strengthened under the pressure of the Cold War. New institutional frameworks emerged from the wreckage of the 2008 financial crisis. Maybe the crises unfolding right now are laying the groundwork for another great transformation. But for that transformation to happen, a few things are absolutely essential. First, collective defense. Europe needs to build its own military capacity. It's being discussed, but progress is painfully slow. Second, energy independence. Renewable energy is Europe's real opportunity, and in this area, they are genuinely moving fast. Third, technology investment. artificial intelligence, biotechnology, green technology, Europe can still produce major players in these fields. And fourth, and perhaps the hardest of all, political courage. Leaders who can resist short-term populism and commit to long-term reform. Where are those leaders right now? I genuinely don't know the answer to that question, and that is the thing that troubles me most. Let me paint you a scene. Winter 2022. Germany, Russia cuts the gas. Europe panics. German officials are looking at wood-burning stove inventory. They're telling people to shorten their showers. Don't touch the thermostat. The world's fourth largest economy, scrambling for firewood to stay warm. That scene, to me, captures where Europe is better than anything else could. A great historical power, but carrying a dangerous fragility inside it. Is Europe collapsing? Maybe it's collapsing. Maybe it's transforming. Maybe both are happening at the same time. But here's what I do know. The future of this continent affects not just Europeans. It affects all of us. The global economy is tied to Europe. Global security is tied to Europe. Global culture is tied to Europe. When Europe stumbles, the world stumbles. And right now, Europe is stumbling. My question for you, if the European model fails, what replaces it? Drop your answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know what you think.